Hello everyone and welcome back to a new video here on the new Byte. My name's Hostess and today we have a little talk round. Joined as always, of course, am I with Dan and Emily. So thanks for joining us today. How are you doing?
Doing good, doing good.
Same. Same. How
Same.
are you, house test?
I'm good as well. After a long work day, it's nice to sit down and have a little chat with you. And today's topic at hand is Anthem and, of course, Bioware overall, because yesterday at 11 a.m., at least European time, on Kotaku, there was a report released by Jason Schreier again. Awesome work he does as always. And he talked to some people over at Bioware on different levels. I think in total he says he had access to people, like 19 of them, and he interviewed them about the development of Anthem, which is, as we know right now, on Metacritic rating is 55%, so more towards mediocre, okay-ish, but not really good. Not as was hyped at release and before that. And now we heard a lot of insights about it. And especially Dan had lots of things to share about before we talked that, because this morning already posted like, oh, did you read this? Very lengthy, but really interesting. And today we want to sit down and talk about it and actually, let out some thoughts and maybe some frustrations in general. And I'm very interested to see what you guys think about it. So for the viewers that see the video call, I have the article open here. And I'll just go along if you have points so I can actually show inside the source what we have. Dan, what's the first thing that you thought when you read the story?
Well, I have a lot to rant about, mainly just because of it really kind of as an aspiring developer, it really kind of tugged at my heartstrings from both a gamer's perspective and a development perspective, because you really get a sense that from just reading this article and reading all the stuff about Anthem and the interviews that various team members have talked about, it was really a passionate project that people were really invested into, and started out as something as, oh, we're going to create a game that we're going to pour our hearts and souls into, make something absolutely fantastic and amazing. That will be cool. That will be referred to in years to come as the game that changed the course of the gaming industry. They originally called it, they codenamed it Dylan in reference to Bob Dylan.
Who also changed the landscape of music industry and everything.
Exactly. So it was, you really get a sense that it started out with not a very clear direction, but a very passionate direction and a semi coherent goal. But just reading through the article, you can just see like blow after blow after blow just getting hit into Anthem as a whole and turning it into what it became. But I've got like tons to rant about, so I'd like to get M's opinion, if she's because you've read it, haven't you?
You can talk, Emily.
Well, I haven't read it.
Okay.
I've heard a lot of things though.
Okay.
And playing the actual game, to me it was probably one of the best games, as it was, what it wanted to achieve. I felt like they were doing that when I was playing it for the first time. But hearing all these reviews, hearing everyone else's opinion, I think I have to agree, because maybe the developers were thinking about something else when they should have been thinking about the core, what they should have in the big. I don't really know.
There's some hooks in the game that are clearly missing, because it's a looter shooter, which is just meaning you shoot a lot of things. It's a shooter game, but you also get a lot of loot, and that aspect sadly falls flat a lot. And we can talk about specifics. Just let's all summarize how much playtime we got out of Anthem, because I joined in with the Origin Access program, I think, on PC. It's called that. And I had like, I think 6 to maybe 7 hours, like two days or something like that. I was thinking, okay, this is interesting, but I think like my interest is going away. And after a few days, I saw all these also other opinions coming around. I was seeing, okay, this is not getting better, so I just didn't waste my time. I actually quit my subscription for that. Emily, how much playtime did you have? Because you and I actually did a little talk video about that.
Sorry. How
much was it? 1, 2 hours?
Mine was probably about 1.5 hours, I think.
Introduction scene definitely, and a little bit of gameplay then, right?
Yeah, I mean, I did get to fly a little bit, which was probably one of the main things I liked about the game. And I also like the design, like how you can design it and stuff. But that's not what you look for in Anthem.
Not if you want to play it for like the 20, 30, or even hundreds of hours.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then how much did you play of it?
What, myself?
Yeah, how much did you play of it?
Yeah.
Because I think you actually bought it, right?
I have bought it. I got the I want to
Legion of Dawn?
Yeah, Legion of Dawn edition. That's the one.
Yeah.
So, something of Dawn. I got the Legion of Dawn edition, and I've probably clocked in over between 10 and 15 hours. I've clocked in quite a good time because I opposed to kind of like general consensus. I have enjoyed it. I have enjoyed playing certain aspects of the game. I'd prefer to like play with friends. I think that would add a lot more playtime to it. But you really get when you're playing the game, you really get a sense that certain things were layered on top of other things just to put them there, and not to actually further anything or provide more of an engaging environment. For example, in the trailer which they first showed us in 2017 at E3, they showed things like a couple of players were just flying around the world, shooting some bad guys, and then they come across some ruins, and in the ruins they find a massive beast that I can't remember the name of, and it slams into some wolves and throws them about, and then starts to get angry at the player, and the player's like, okay, now I'm just going to leave. But something like that never occurs in Anthem, because all of the
things that we saw back then, were not real.
Because all of those things weren't real. But even if they were real, having something like that where enemies interacted with each other and fought each other and things like that, and had an ecosystem, that's not completely unachievable. But with the with what they've got at the moment, there are certain enemies which you could probably, if somebody took enough time, they could probably create a map, put it up online, and have areas that they could circle and go, this thing will always be here within this area, because that's essentially what happens, which is really sad, because it's like you can't have a modern day open world game and just have like groups of enemies. Like, you can do that for something like an MMO where you need to farm certain enemies to get to the next group of enemies to get to the next one and level up and all that. But with something like Anthem, there's not really that much progression in terms of leveling, because it's like once you get to a certain point, it's all about getting different types of gear with different types of loot rolls.
Yeah, that's basically the whole aspect of this genre. You have a certain set of missions, which are basically the story. Quality of that is good, and sometimes not as good. Basically, after you played through that, you actually enter the sort of end game of that specific title, which is always a gameplay loop where you log in every week, have reset every week once, and start over quests and missions, and can actually just farm for stuff which makes you bigger, better, and everything, and makes up for a whole lot of things, because you get cool loot and can use the loot and to improve other skills. And maybe there's like so-called end game activities, like for example a raid, like a very lengthy mission style thing, which you enter definitely with at least a group of people. You can't solo this content mostly alone, and for that you need to ramp up a lot of gear, which helps you to get the numbers high enough so you can actually fulfill that activity's needs. That basically is what it is usually. And as an example, I always pull out Destiny. I always play Destiny mission once, and would always hope that for my second and third character, I could just skip that and go right into the end game stuff, because that's actually the most fun of it. But yeah, it's always that hurdle that I have, which I haven't just managed to get over with Anthem. And again, like the motivation wasn't really that high because there was not much reported of endgame content there as well. But
Yeah,
I think
I
before we talk about that more, how about we go into the article itself and actually start revealing things that we learned?
Sure. I think the first thing I really want to get Emily's opinion on, because just the first paragraph really strikes a chord with myself, and I think it might strike a chord with you as well. So the game originally wasn't supposed to be called Anthem.
Yep, as
It had a completely different title. It was called Beyond. They'd gotten all the stuff ready. They got T-shirts. They've got promotional material for
Really?
Beyond and everything. Yeah, and then a few days before E3, EA said to BioWare, "We can't
we can't use that
we
license.
can't use the rights. We can't get the rights for Beyond. It's too vague a word, or it's something like that. So we can't trademark it. We can't do all of the stuff we want to do with it." And this is like 2 days before they're supposed to go up onto the E3 stage and go, "This is our new game Beyond." So they have to create new T-shirts, create new promotional material, take the video that they've just created, slap a whole new name onto it. They basically had to reinvent the entire game in like 2 or 3 days before they had to present it. It's not.
So was okay. Firstly, that is literally just bad planning.
Yeah.
And bad pre-production skills.
Yes.
Which is probably what we're going to talk about all the time right now with this. Like,
yes.
It's a mess.
Yes. Oh.
And basically, they were asking for it if they didn't already, if they had a title which they didn't even have the copyright for. That is just so bad.
Yeah, because with how video game companies work, from what my very basic understanding, because EA owns BioWare says, "We have a game. This is like the list of like 2 or 3 different titles we want to call it.
Okay.
But Beyond is what we want to call it, and Anthem was somewhere in the mix." So what EA did was like, "Yes, we're calling it Beyond. We love that idea." So that all of BioWare's team just go, "Beyond is the name of the title," and we go through and we create all of the stuff for it. And then it's EA's job to get Beyond trademarked, written in, made sure that everything is done for that. But because they were so lax on it and didn't decide to do this sooner, a couple of days before E3, they were just like, "Oh, we couldn't get Beyond, by the way. Anthem is the name of your game. Good luck."
Oh my
And
God.
that just really makes me want to punch somebody at EA. Like, I love EA games. I love the Mass Effect series. I love Dragon Age, but and I love a couple of other EA games I love. Sims is EA, isn't it? Yeah.
Sims.
Yep. And I love Sims. It's a lot of fun to play, but I gotta say, how do you not, like, when a team comes to you like, "Here is the name," how do you not immediately just go, "Okay, we need to get on this as soon as possible, because if we have that done, that is something out the window. We don't have to worry about that, and the team doesn't have to worry about that."
Yeah.
And basically, it just comes down to the fact. Then let me just pull the brakes a little bit.
I'm sighing here, just
like slowing you down a little bit, because the thing mostly is, as we saw in this article, it's like 10 pages long, maybe. It's of course a very long website, but if I would print it out, it's probably like 10 pages, so it takes a lot of time. And one thing that clearly came out was there was no real direction, which the Beyond thing is only one example of. Because with Beyond, people were thinking, okay, we go beyond the limits of the city out into the wild and do our things there. Because what actually that was shown, I think in 2015, 2 years prior to that, they had already a little bit of concept where there's like a city battalion that's surrounded by the wall, just like Destiny, and where you can go out into the wild and you have to use your javelins, these suits, to survive. That was the whole idea with it. And the aspect, for example, of flying was tried out, pulled out again, put in again, back and forth. And that caused so much trouble in the meantime that, for example, just the world design has to be changed around all the time. If you can't fly, you have to make your maps and levels relatively flat if you can't even vault really. They tried that out and stuff like that. Now they're flying back in again, so make all the things up again, make invisible walls, of course, or just make explanations like there are strong winds here and stuff like that. And shortly before that, title was finally announced, which everyone was like, yeah, Beyond, we get that, Beyond, cool. They say, no, it's Anthem, which is like, what? I guess there's an Anthem of creation, which we haven't really figured out yet what that really is, but all of a sudden this is now the main thing that everyone connects to it, and the developers there also think like, okay, what is the Anthem really about? Have you talked about Anthem? Do you know what this Anthem thing is? It's just one of the many things where you can see how it like really was struggling to be a coherent idea put through by designers, developers, and especially of course the leads that had to put these things together in the end.
Yeah. Yeah, I really think it's because as you slowly read through the article, I believe it starts out with talking about how Anthem wasn't the name at the beginning of it, and then it talks about it says that the article wasn't just about Anthem's failures; it was the failures of EA and BioWare in keeping the health and their mental capabilities of their studios in a good place. Because if somebody comes into you and says, this is what we're doing this week, and then a couple of days later they turn around and go, actually, we've decided we're going to reverse everything, reinvent the wheel, and just for fun bake a cake at the same time. And that, of course, no mental human can stand up to that kind of stress. So they have to take, as it said here, many co-workers had to take stress leave, a doctor-mandated period of weeks or even months worth of vacation to keep their mental health. That is not good. That is not even
definitely not good.
Like if that was in any other kind of sector of work, a government of some description would step in and go, nah, you can't do this.
As they say here, one former BioWare developer told me they would frequently find a private room in the office, shut the door, and just cry. In quote, people were so angry and sad all the time, quote, and they said. And another said, quote, depression and anxiety are an epidemic within BioWare. If somebody says that, it's bad. It's really bad. So this is not really the failure of just the game, which we know now as Anthem. This is an industry-wide problem, which not probably everywhere is as bad as this, but definitely is not the only situation where things come out like that. It's just the one thing that we see right now. So just keep that in mind. This is really reflective of the AAA gaming industry, what we hear here and there from crunch time problems, which, if you don't know what that is, it basically means outside of your normal office hours, which you usually do, you put in extra hours just so you can fit everything in before there's the deadline, which is called then the crunch time. People don't leave their offices partially, which is the really bad case. If you just stay at work, basically sleep on your desk, wake up, go to work, back again, you can't really get out of that stress loop. So it's really bad.
Yeah. And as you said, this is not just EA and BioWare are being highlighted in this mainly because of kind of like this is a closer, in-depth look at Anthem, but this kind of behavior is rampant across the video game industry as a whole, and it's everything from AAA companies and titles to indie games as well, because I've read several stories of really small games that have been brought out by 1 or 2 man teams where they've spent months just staring at a screen doing nothing else, trying to get this out so that they can justify or validate what they've been doing with their time. And it's really sad that, and it's not sad, it's depressing. It's a strain on just the reader and fans of video games alike, because we want good games, and yes, we can be a demanding audience, but I think if we took a poll of everybody who plays video games, it would be heavily weighted in the favor of we want people to not be stressed out and make great games rather than just have a game every single year. Like, yes, we want a game every single year, but we don't want other people to put their mental and physical health on the line for it.
I think definitely there's a very large margin which just says, hey, we want cool games, but take your time. if it's not done yet, please fix it first and then publish it. There's only like a handful of bad people that actually just say, oh, this is game development. This is not a real job. You should be really lucky that you do this. And I hate this. And luckily, this is only a very small part. But sadly, they're always vocal because negativity, of course, attracts attention. Let me just go on. There's one thing that you said, the validation of that workspace. And they also put out also an article here. Many at the company now grumble that the success of 2014's Dragon Age Inquisition was one of the worst things that could have happened to them. The third Dragon Age, which won Game of the Year at the 2014 Game Awards, was the result of a brutal production process plagued by indecision and technical challenges. It was mostly built over the course of its final year, which led to the lengthy crunch hours and lots of exhaustion. And quote, some of the people in Edmonton were so burned out, they were like, we need a Dragon Age Inquisition to fail in order for people to realize that this isn't the right way to make games, quote end. And that didn't happen. Sadly, it got the attention, it got the success, it was really highly acclaimed. And that was when it just was, well, shit, it's working. For once? Question mark. And as we go on into this article, so if you read it yourself, please go on in. We link it in the description. Read it yourself also, because we only like go through a glimpse of it and highlight a few things that we find interesting to talk about. But like, it's really good. Just check it out yourself. At least Jason Schreier really deserves your attention for that. But you can really see what they called at BioWare was called BioWare magic. You know, at Valve, they had Valve time, where they say, oh, the game's not done yet, so we just extend it. Whatever. If it's done, it's done. If it takes 2 years longer, that's it. And the same thing is also with CD Projekt Red when they did Witcher 3. I was listening to a podcast today where Jesse Cox, one of the YouTubers that I follow, he said like, yeah, at one E3 I played a demo of Witcher 3 and it felt like a done game. And then it turns out it was released 4 years later. So they really take the time, and gladly they do that because the products in the end speak for it. But with BioWare here, the problem was really they believe in this BioWare magic, like, in the end it all comes together, whatever. And with Dragon Age Inquisition, it sadly was like that. Sadly, it got the attention, as they explained. But with Anthem, that was the final straw where it really just fell apart.
Yeah, I think with BioWare magic, there is a kind of BioWare magic across the Mass Effect trilogy and most of the Dragon Age series. But I would say that's down to, specifically for something like Dragon Age Inquisition, because it was the third game in the Dragon Age series, there was a coherent beginning and a coherent end, because they knew where they were coming from, because it was a direct continuation of the second game, and it was coming up to a final battle in the third act, essentially the ramping up, the final battle. So there was already stuff in place, and there was plans of where it was supposed to go, but in terms of
the art direction where it's going, it's basically just more of the same thing. The gameplay combat basically, it's just like refining what you already have in the sequel.
And just making sure that all of the gameplay mechanics work the way you want it to. All of the items drop properly, and players can use them and whatnot. And then, of course, because there was a multiplayer aspect, the multiplayer works and everything. That's where BioWare magic works, because it has a coherent direction. But because
people that actually can make decisions, which is another thing that we saw in this article. There were multiple sessions where people come together, discuss a thing, how they want to do it. And at the end of the meeting, nothing happened. Nobody was making a decision. Nobody's sitting down and saying, we do it this way. That's it. Nothing of that happened. There was lots of things where just time was basically lost. And we have to say one thing. EA is not the only bad guy in this situation. There's also how BioWare works, apparently, because I can understand as an investor into a developer, if after, I think, 5 years of development, there's nothing coming around, you really clearly have to make decisions and ask questions. And that was back then when Patrick Soderlund was at EA. He sat down, I think, at the end of 2015, played the demo and said, this is not what you promised to us. You need to do better. And then they switched around. They already crunched just for the pre-production of that. They did a second demo afterwards, and then that was finally what worked for him, at least. So at least then EA, in form of Patrick Soderlund, was happy. I just want to quickly point out, there's a quick description of what they had in mind with that. I just want to read that article a bit out. Over the months, a core concept started to crystallize that was between 2012 and 13. Anthem's planet would be sort of like the Bermuda Triangle of this universe, with an inexorable gravity that was constantly pulling in alien ships and hazards. As a result, the world would be lethal and full of dangerous creatures. Quote, "You are at the bottom of the food chain, and everything is significantly more powerful than you," said one person who worked on the game. When describing these early iterations of Anthem, developers have made comparisons to Dark Souls, Darkest Dungeon, and even Shadow of the Colossus. There would be big, scary creatures out there in the world, and your job would be to see how long you could survive. One prototype allowed the player to attach themselves to a giant monster, and others were centered on the atmosphere, the weather, and environmental effects. Which is something that was not new in this article. We heard about that in a design book, I think, where they also sort of, we had this idea first, and then it turned into this. So already from that idea, I would say, well, from this paragraph alone, I see, that's a concept. You can expand that into a full game, write a little bit of story around that, and you'll be good to go. Because if the idea would be to do a looter shooter, and I know Destiny came out 2014, it had its troubles, and only after 2015, really, it started to be a success story. And before that, at least I only know about, was Borderlands, which also had its own fair bit of shares and was not that mega success that Destiny later became, but was still at least one guidance. Now in 2019, we have so many more games and failed attempts that it could have learned from, but the problem is, sadly, that they couldn't have that information back then, and they sort of were just reiterating what they had, and sadly, the good parts that were there in the start, at least, they fell apart completely.
Yeah, because with if you continue through to the article, you read that based off of that, they brought a veteran Dragon Age writer in early 2015 called David Gator, and I think that them bringing in David was not was both a blessing and a curse, because it was a blessing because they were bringing in a veteran writer who would be able to direct the story, direct the kind of like core concept of the game into something more refined and more better, well-rounded. But the problem was he wanted to take the story into a traditional BioWare style with kind of big villains, ancient alien artifacts, and so on. But of course, this was not where the developers were going. They were going for a more kind of open world survival game rather than a big, complicated story. And
which is something like Destiny does. Sorry, which is something like also Destiny does. They don't have that one big villain. They have lots of different races and aliens that are more like a bunch of bad things that come together and actually fighting you. And you and your friends together have the power role to defend against it. You're not an actor in this. You're still defending, which they try to go from the very start.
Yeah, and a lot of developers were saying, we don't want to see a sci-fi Dragon Age, we don't want to tell the same story. And his response to it was like, he was fine with a kind of science fantasy, which was the direction that EA's and BioWare's leadership were pushing him towards, because fantasy was kind of his comfort zone. But he said, and this is a quote, "It was clear from the outset there was a lot of opposition to the change from the rest of the team. Maybe they assumed the idea for it came from me. I'm not sure, but comments like it's very Dragon Age kept coming up regarding any of the work me or my team did, and not in a complimentary matter. There was a lot of people who wanted to say over Anthem's story and kept articulating a desire to do something different without really being clear on what that was, outside of it being anything BioWare had done before." So, and continuing, from my perspective, it was rather frustrating, and I can understand that massively, because it's like he was brought in to create direction, and the developers who had poured their souls into this didn't want like his kind of direction, or they didn't want it to be the same. I think it's a little bit not stubborn that he didn't try and change it up a bit and go kind of, okay, you're not wanting fantasy, and listen to a bunch of people, storyboard it, and come up with something. Which I don't know David Gator in any form apart from his work with Dragon Age, and Dragon Age is an amazing series. But if this was supposed to be more of a survival game than it was supposed to be a role-playing game, then then just as a whole, as a writer, you need to change up the way you're looking at it, and maybe focus more on just kind of like building the lore aspects of the world than building an overarching story. So,
as it says at the end of it, when writing is unsure of what it's doing, it causes a lot of destruction to a lot of departments. Because, of course, as the story is the foundation of what they want to do progress-wise, what are the missions like, what are the points actually of interaction, everything else also follows along. If you have a gameplay loop, you can adjust to that. You can start implementing iterations of that, where you start with one or two things and then expand it a little bit over the course of the story, which is, of course, harmonizing if it's set correctly and at least has a vision. But in that case, it was just very frustrating. I would suggest, because we're already hitting the 30-minute mark, that we move on a little bit to more closer to release. Because there's one thing that we need to talk about, and that is Frostbite, the engine. Also.
Yes, that's what I wanted to talk about, because I had a big problem with when I was reading the article. They were talking about Frostbite in a very negative manner, because they had a lot of basically, if just to explain a bit about Frostbite is a video game engine that was created by the Swedish studio DICE, and this is a engine that is designed to create first-person shooters, specifically for the Battlefield series, where it creates amazing landscapes that can be destroyed in seconds and rebuilt in seconds again, and it's more focused on gun combat, and you just go in, you do a mission, and that's it, and you go from point A to point B, and there's no like saving and quitting. There's a few checkpoints here and there, but nothing crazy. So,
and especially map space, you have maps. There's no open world or anything. There's always a map and another map and another map, which you load in and leave. There's always a small boundary compared to what they wanted to do with Anthem.
Yeah. So with that, what they had to do was they had to take this development environment that was built for creating a first-person shooter and tailor it to a third-person role-playing game with inventory and loot-based, and being able to be in a massive open world and interact with other players and everything across a persistent online environment. And that's just not what it's built to do. So they had to, I just can't believe this. They had to rebuild the entirety of just certain aspects of core elements of the game because they were using a development environment that was just not built for it.
It really shows, for example, in the way how you select missions, because it feels like this is, you go in the world and there's a sort of map that you follow always, and you can't replay missions. You always have to pick from a mission screen. You can't just say, oh, I just want to go out and start a mission whenever. God, so many problems in that. And I know that from my personal space, I work in web design and web development of functions and stuff like that. And sometimes we use also external libraries, of course, which it just happens you do that. And you stumble over one thing which you think like, how did this original writer of that function really intended this to be used? And you started to think like, okay, I need this thing, and I can't really afford to spend more time investing researching more, of course, other libraries that maybe could work, because if you want to swap something out which is already in use, it's lots of struggles and everything like that. And especially if you also have in-house code as well, which is not sometimes well commented on, which was also the same thing with Frostbite. Lots of things that had people, very smart people, actually putting lots of thought in that for that one purpose. But if you wanted to use it in any other context, it just fall apart. And with not really apparently good comments on the code and, of course, documentation, you can't really work with that. And it's just easier to rebuild everything yourself, but that takes more time.
Yeah. So the thing that I think is a really, really, really weird decision from, I believe, BioWare's leadership and management decided this. So they had basically had to redo Dragon Age Inquisition with the Frostbite engine. But for Anthem, they decided, no, we're going to just do everything from scratch again. Instead of trying to build upon Inquisition and go, okay, this is the stuff that we've made for it. How can we improve this and take it and make it better and everything? And just kind of build upon what they'd already created. They decided that the decision was, we're going to we're going to do this from the ground up, and we're not going to take everything that we learn from what we met with the mistakes and all of the like good stuff that came out of it. We're going to work with a fresh canvas straight off the Frostbite engine, which of course you're building something out of something that wasn't designed to build it. Of course you're going to encounter issues. So of course they try to go to EA's dedicated Frostbite team that are set up to like tech support essentially,
like basically tech support for in-house development. Definitely.
Yeah, exactly. If they have any problems, they can call up or send a ticket to the Frostbite team, and they will get back to them on any issues and try and help them out as best as possible. But because Anthem was an IP that was not EA specific and wasn't a hard hitter such like FIFA was or Battlefield, they got third billing or possibly lower billing than some other planned stuff and things that were in development, because they didn't have a big revenue that was going to come into it, because FIFA has to come out every year so they can make
FIFA, Battlefront,
and Battlefront has to, and so they had to get tickets whenever they could, and if the Frostbite team got to them, they were lucky, and that should never happen. They should have I believe that the Frostbite team should be split up into smaller divisions that focus on helping out specific studios. So like BioWare has a Frostbite team that they can go to and go, okay, we have this problem with this title, and they go, all right, we'll get back to you on this one, we'll do some more research or something. But I don't understand, it just makes no sense why there'd be one team that has to deal with everybody's problems, because that just causes so many backups. But
and there's another thing also, the structure of how BioWare is set up. They have multiple studios, and as it became clear from interviewing the developers there, between BioWare, the 3 subsidiaries, the third one was already closed after Mass Effect Andromeda's failure, and they had like actually a tier list of, this is the A team in Edmonton, then there's the B team and the C team, and when the guys came over that did, what does KOTOR stands for? The Star Wars game.
What? Oh, Star Wars: The Old Republic.
Yeah, Old Republic, sorry. These guys had already experience with online gaming and stuff like that. When they came over and said, like, after a lengthy time, they got more developers on Anthem, of course, so it got to be done. They came together, and because they were from a studio which didn't do, like, the high-level stuff, they were not really that good, and if they wanted to bring something in from the experience that they had, the A team, in that sense, just took it as, oh, but whatever, we do something completely new here in that way, so they just ignored that, which, so it's inside of BioWare, lots of struggles with how people work together, and it only gets worse if you're completely stressed out all the time anyway, because you don't have a direction, and trust me, guys, this is the worst thing. If you don't have a clear direction, just like, I don't know why I'm here, I guess I do what I do, this is not really fulfilling, and also keeps your frustration high, whereas the motivation is really low to work for everything. So taking in feedback from another team feels really like, what do you know? And I understand that sentiment sometimes, because it really is bad, but it only shows like how the environment around it also sadly supports that, because it brings these things forward if you have a bad setup, that it's lots of stress and everything.
Yeah, and I don't even know where to continue.
There's one last thing that I wanted to talk about. There's that they specifically also blacked out Destiny. They never wanted to look at that. They always wanted to look more. Which one was the Blizzard game?
Diablo 3.
Diablo 3, right? They wanted to go with that direction because this is more RPG style. This is where BioWare really excels. But they were doing a shooter.
Yeah.
Not Diablo, so they definitely should have looked at Destiny, and especially in the time from 2015 at least, from 2018 on and everything, they could have learned so much, but the elites were just like ignoring that. They were not taking feedback in. Developers were seeing issues. We're seeing like in the free time when they had some, if they played something, they say, I saw this thing, it's really cool, and the elites were like, we don't accept this. This is not our game. And it's like,
see, there's something that also is a big, massive difference between those two games. Destiny is a online persistent multiplayer shooter. Diablo 3 is a single and possibly multiplayer RPG, looter RPG. But the key difference is Destiny has a persistent open worlds that constantly have people dropping into it, especially when you're in open environments, whereas Diablo 3 doesn't have that. Diablo 3 has invitations so that you and a bunch of friends can play together, but that's only a maximum of like 4 people total. That's not even close to how many people they would want for something like Anthem or Destiny with their persistent worlds. And they ended up doing the fire teams with Diablo. With Anthem, they ended up doing like you drop into a world and you have a maximum of 4 people, which is fine. But sometimes if you just want to go out on your own or as a solo or something, and then have it as friends invite or friends can join you if they want to, you can't do that unless you come out of the world that you're playing in and then invite somebody.
Let's just go on between the last few months, actually, of the year, because as I say here, it came time to move from pre-production to production in June, said one Bioware developer. June comes, we're still in pre-production. July, August, what the heck is going on? That was just one of the many problems where they, as it came out now, from pre-production to full production, they had so many issues where they were really not sure. It was really lengthy. But the actual full time that they worked on actually making the game was like roughly a year. And come to think of it, for a year, what Anthem was at the beginning, I was thinking, actually, that's not bad. Because they were always talking about they had like 5 years to develop the game. And you'd think in 5 years they have enough time to set it up, to test it, specifically test it, and get the things working. So when you were, at least I was like very disappointed because I was thinking they had so much time and put this out. Really doesn't feel good. Now it came out, this actually was just like a year worth of development, like actual development on the game. I think, holy God, they actually did a lot of good things, and I gotta give them respect actually for that. And for example, the thing why the loot feels so underdeveloped is because they didn't have time to develop good loot. The guns and everything just they basically have like 8 different guns, I guess. Don't quote me on that, whatever. Like they have a set of guns, and they're just like different titles next to it. It's like, this is an epic gun. It looks exactly the same. It has like a few numbers different, but the reason why there's no like cool things like in Borderlands or Destiny, where they have like charisma, characteristics, where you can say, oh, this is from a specific set, for example, where like color schemes come back again every time you say, oh, this is from. For example, in Destiny, you have certain activities that give from a certain loot pool, guns and shaders, and of course, gear as well. So you're saying, oh, for example, that person plays a lot of PvP because he's wearing and using things from that loot pool. With Anthem, you don't have specifically that thing going for the javelins, but at least in certain of guns, you could say, oh, they were doing that one activity, for example, a lot, and they got this gun. But it just looks like everything else, because they sadly didn't have enough time or just manpower to develop actually cool things, which is just, again, they wanted to do a new thing. I respect that, but just not looking at all into what the others did well is just mind-numbing, but mind-boggling why they were so blind to that. And sadly, at the end, the ones that had to carry out that not vision really were the poor developers who were crunching for a longer time anyway, just trying to please both the investors at EA, but also to try to get at least something on the road. So really feel bad for these guys. And I gotta say, guys, if you worked on Anthem, sorry that I ever said something bad about you. I never meant you specifically. You got all my props. I hope you're leaving BioWare and find a good job at a good developer, and hopefully the next game that you work on is really fulfilling you, because that's what I want from you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, if I could get one thing, if I could just have like one wish out of all of this that has come about, which I sadly don't think is going to happen, I really want one studio to just say, as it just like out there to the public, and just say, we're taking most of our developers from this one studio or this one development team, and they are going to create a game. And they're going to take as long as they need to create it, and we're going to give them as much support as they need, and we're going to try and get them to where they need to be to create a game as an experiment to see what it's like. Because I would bet stupid money, absolutely stupid amounts of money, that they would create an absolutely amazing game that would just blow away all kind of records of just kind of pre-orders or just playtime, general positivity for the game, just because we know that these people spend their lives creating video games, and if they can't if they don't have the tools or this motivation or the support to create the kind of games that they're capable of creating, why are they even doing what they're doing? And I really just wish I really wish EA would just say to BioWare, okay, we've messed up on all of these. The next game that you create, Dragon Age 4, or let's say they decide to hopefully one day bring back the Mass Effect series and go, okay, we're going to do a reboot on this and create a better version. Just give them the support that they need, because BioWare created the Mass Effect series, one of the most iconic video game series that introduced a save that transfers across all of the games. All of the games. That's an amazing feature that people really can get invested into. So I just hope that they take this under advisement. It's not a dig at them, it's just a dig at the system that they can change. They can make better.
Yeah. So we're hitting the 45-minute mark. I guess we just put out only in bullet points what is also in there. One of the few things, the game wasn't stable enough to be tested. So they had like a week, for example, oftentimes at least a few days where they couldn't access the game at all and could try it. So they're just like working in the dark. Like, I guess I'm just going to do this thing, and they couldn't try it out in the game, except it actually works. That was sad. Then shipping came first, no matter what it was. If there was no decision on that, at the end, they just like, whatever, just finish the thing that you were working on, go on. That just comes together as a very bad thing. They had motion capture, of course, and storylines that have been recorded there, which did not fit at the end because they had to be done very early on, of course. They were so expensive that they couldn't redo them. So there's sometimes dialogue in the game where, like, for example, a character said, "Oh, my javelin got destroyed." And that never happened in the story because it was actually, at one point, was planned to see that in the game, in the story. And it was only later on referenced by some voice actors, which it wasn't in there. That was not an oversight. That was just bad planning and sadly not realizing what was actually planned back then, sadly. And so many more things. Oh, God, it is really sad to read all of this. But yeah, I think we should come to a close at least at some point. So I think, Dan, how about you put out your one last thing that you want to say about the story?
I think I pretty much did.
Okay.
Kind of my rant. Maybe just copy and paste that back in. Just have that play again or something. Okay. But yeah, that I just hope that that's something.
How about you do actually the one last thing that you do is reacting to the EA statement.
Okay, I'll react to the EA statement. The EA statement annoyed me for multiple reasons, but just to keeping it short, it annoyed me because it seemed like somebody in their marketing department was just like, okay, this is a fire we need to put out, and just stuck out a statement that was generic and not even looked at the article and what it said. Because this is, if anybody from EA or BioWare reads this properly, they will understand that this article is not it's not like saying Anthem was a shitty game and we hate EA and we hate Anthem. And we hate Anthem, we hate BioWare. This is not what this is saying. It's saying we hate the system that's in place, and these are the opportunities to allow them to fix it. And this is the areas that they could improve upon. And it even ends on a positive note of just kind of what was it here? A few months. Hang on.
Take your time.
Sorry.
In the meantime, maybe Em can share her thoughts in that, because after she heard all of that, maybe she has also something to say. We'll come back to you later.
So, do you want specific thoughts on anything, or just?
Well, you heard the story now from us, so what do you think about what you heard?
I've heard your opinions and what you think about it, so I might be biased about the whole thing.
Whatever, just put it out. Come on.
Okay. I think it's kind of it's not good. What is it BioWare were doing to their employees? I know it's not. It's very common in the gaming industry to do that, but I think overworking employees is a bad thing.
Just in general, of course, right?
Yeah, and it's very, very unhealthy for people to be in that situation. And the thing that we were discussing earlier with the promotional materials was, oh my gosh, I actually cannot believe that they did that. Like, these guys are meant to be professionals in the gaming industry, and they didn't even get the correct, like, they didn't even do that research properly before actually making the game. They just went, oh yeah, let's make this game before even doing the research into actually getting the copyright.
Yeah, or before even knowing what the game should be, you know.
Exactly. I mean, every game starts with an idea, and the idea comes with the title, and surely the title should be part of the copyright in like the first part of the game, well, in the development of the game. So yeah, that's probably the thing that really annoys me the most, or that I picked up on from being biased about, you know, this whole thing.
Also, we bias you in that you haven't read it beforehand. It was rather a quick decision to say, how about we sit down this evening and just record it? So, of course, there's no plan. I'm sorry. This was not meant to shame you.
No.
It's fine.
Okay. I finally, if we're coming back to me, I finally found the thing I wanted.
Emily, are you done talking? Emily, are you done talking?
Sorry.
Go on, Daniel.
Okay, as long as you're okay with that, as long as it's okay. Okay. All right.
All is fine.
Right. What I wanted to say was the article ends on a positive, or tries to end on a positive note that says perhaps Anthem will morph into a great game one day. A few people who worked on it have expressed optimism for the future, saying a lot of us were screaming at the wall. Over time, what builds up is okay, that when we get control, we're going to fix it. Sure, the game has all these problems, and we understand them. It's very much a motivated to fix attitude, and I think that's a good attitude because they've realized that there are problems and they realize that they want to fix it. But I think ultimately EA and BioWare need to take a proper hard look at this and go, this actually makes a lot of positive points. We do need to go back to the drawing board on how all of our teams perform and operate, and how we output games as a company and as a business. Because if they commit to higher quality games by giving developers more time, and I'm not saying like more time off to heal or whatever, more time to just work on the things they need to work on, maybe have some people work on Frostbite as an engine to make it a more well-rounded engine to cover many different bases, not just specifically first-person shooters, and then try and morph it to whatever else we want to put in. But I think that if they can do that, they will become EA will be lifted out of the lifted out from where they currently stand with gamers as a whole, because they're always the butt of a lot of jokes. But I think that they can raise themselves back up, and BioWare can pull itself back up to the position where it was before, as a very, very, very highly respected and anticipated studio of such a high caliber. And I really hope that they're able to get back to where they want to with either the next Dragon Age series or the game after. But they need to start like re-looking at their thing and going, step back and go, okay, how can we make this a better experience for you as developers, so that we can make it a better experience for the players? So, because it's not just about how much we can grab their money. If we can give them a good experience that they want to keep coming back to and make more content for that, they're going to just hand us their money hand over fist, because I know I will. So I just hope that they can look at this in a more objective light and go, this is what we're doing.
Okay. Well, I have a different thought about that.
Okay.
Because while they already have a roadmap and have like updates planned for the next 3 months, they clearly want to do better on it. What they have at least now, you know, the game's out. You know, it is what it is. But at least there's always like, okay, but we can work on it. Now that we have something, we can start iterating on it. We can take a look at the community, which also has ideas, which has feedbacks, which really helps, of course, to work on the game as well. But I think, which doesn't, I don't mean it as a negative thing, but maybe it's time for BioWare to dissolve, because this problem, as I read through all these things, it is a systematic thing. It doesn't really work out anymore. And maybe it's just saying, maybe it's just easier to say, hey, maybe they dissolve actually BioWare. If not BioWare itself does it, it'd probably be EA at the end, when they say, the games are not putting numbers anywhere, so we just let all of you go. But I would hope for them that afterwards they find together again, at least like the most of them that are still willing to do that. So there's a new company in the end, which is better set up for the thing, which works better with each other, respects itself more, and everyone can just say, oh, this is the former BioWare team, the good one, because that works. We see it with Kojima Productions right now. Everyone is attaching that name and his team, of course, to that, what he did. Completely outside of what Konami did to them in the years of Metal Gear Solid 5 development time. And they think like, okay, there's still hope for that. They are really hyped for that, what they are doing. It could probably also work for what BioWare can do in the future if they were to dissolve, for example. So I think for them, maybe it's the best thing to just cut off the old things that are just like really stopping them from being great. And then hopefully they can become something very good again. It's a different take on it. At the end of it, we both just want the best for the people and what they can do, because we know they can do things. But it just really tells a lot when people that were over a decade at the studio leave in midst of development because they can't take it anymore, because of the stress leave that they needed or something else. And they see like, actually, there's a whole world out there. There's lots of other companies out there as well that you can join. Maybe it's time for it to end. Hopefully it ends in a good way for everyone participating, but like, in the end, if EA just pulls the plug and say, you're done, bye-bye, then it's over anyway. So I would definitely think, and I think if they are motivated to continue working on that, there's also motivation there to continue working with that team, as it is right now, definitely. At least. So yeah, good luck to everyone participating.
Yes, hopefully. All right.
Guess this is right. Any last thoughts from anyone? I think we're pretty much like, that was burning on our souls.
Yeah.
Right then. So as we hit almost the hour mark, guys, where can people find you? Emily, where can people find you if they want to hear more from you?
On Twitter at EmilyHM45. Come check me out. What about you, Dan? Where can people find you?
So you can find me at DJH331 on Twitter. If you want to connect with me on any other kind of video games or social media, just kind of search for DJH331, and you can find me pretty much everywhere and anywhere.
Awesome. And my name is Elsis, of course. I'm everywhere as HAU5Test. And of course, we're also all on thenewbyte.com, at thenewbyte on Twitter, and everywhere where there can be a name there. We are also as the New Byte. So follow us there. Of course, follow our YouTube channel here. We just hit the 100 subscriber mark. Of course, we want to continue on with that. I'm sorry for coughing. And as a good reminder, of course, we also have a small giveaway running. So check the video description out. Not going too long about it. Just like check it out. And hope you like this little Fox collection here. It was like a mini podcast episode. I was thinking, we'll do 20 minutes, but the topic overall is so large. We just ended up with an hour of talking. Well, it's definitely good that we did it, and thank you again, guys, for joining me. I hope you liked it, everyone out there. And that's it. Check out the origin story. Link is in the video description down below or on the website if you see it on the website. It's really good. Well written, so interesting. We just glimpsed over some parts which really also deserve your attention in full length. So yeah, check it out. It just really shows how game development is these days, sometimes in the very big investor-driven spheres. So, again, this is just one example that we see now. It's not the only one. But anyway, have a nice day, guys. See you soon, and bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.